you, I think you're about to make off without payment. And if I don't arrest you, then you will make off without payment. So there's my grounds.
Well, I'm offering to make
Can you
payment.
come out of the car, please,
Yeah,
sir?
In this episode, Auditor Brett is at a Tesco petrol station when staff call police claiming he's refusing to pay. In reality, he's trying to pay with a £100 Royal Mint coin, fully legal tender. A sergeant turns up, gets schooled on the law, but instead of backing down, he sides with Tesco and wrongly arrests Brett. That mistake proves costly, as Brett takes the fight to court, secures a massive payout, and leaves the sergeant facing the consequences in court.
This is what's going to happen. Okay, so you've done your bit checking on legislation. I've just checked on my legislation. As I said to you, the shop does not have to accept it just because it is legal tender. You said it's legal tender. You are correct. However, it is a commemorative coin. On the internet, they're worth about 20 quid.
Well,
right, so here is what is going to happen. Either you are going to pay for your fuel correct.
Buckle up, guys. Today we are diving into a wild clash between an auditor and a police sergeant at a Tesco fuel station. What starts as a simple payment dispute quickly spirals into a legal showdown. Brett offers a £100 Royal Mint coin, but staff refuse it, calling police. Instead of applying the law, the sergeant sides with Tesco and threatens arrest. What happens next leads straight to a courtroom battle. Let's see how the storm unfolds.
Or you are going to fill out their civil recovery form so that you can arrange to make payment at a later date, or I'm going to arrest you for bilking.
what's bilking?
Bilking, making off without payment. You've got to the point where payment is due, you're now refusing to make payment, therefore I will treat it as a criminal offence. So how would you wish to proceed at this point?
Well, I have got means to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not going to fill out a civil recovery form as you
Okay,
put it.
right, so what's the means that
What was the
you're
option
going to pay? So option one is either you pay, option two is you fill out the form, option three is that you get arrested.
Well, pay.
No, you pay with legal tender that they will accept.
That is legal tender.
No, they don't have,
But if this is a £50 note and he said, oh look, we don't accept £50 notes because there's lots of forgeries,
Exactly.
would you be doing exactly the same thing now?
Yes, so if you go into a corner shop and try and pay for a penny chew with a £50 note, they are perfectly within their rights to refuse that sale.
The sergeant's opening accusation of bilking doesn't hold water. Under the Theft Act 1978, making off without payment requires two things: actually leaving the premises and intending to avoid payment. The auditor was still on site, sat in his car and actively offering to pay. When the auditor produces a £100 Royal Mint coin, the sergeant makes it worse by saying it depends on what they'll accept. That's not how the law works. Once fuel has been dispensed, a debt exists, and offering legal tender lawfully discharges that debt. A cashier's personal preference or lack of knowledge can't override statute. By siding with Tesco instead of the law, the sergeant showed he had no understanding of the very basics of legal tender.
But this is different because...
No, it's not different.
No, it is.
You have offered a form of payment that they will not accept. The principle is exactly the same.
Well, if you arrest me, it'll be a wrongful arrest.
Yeah? It's not. It's a lawful arrest because I've explained the situation and I've explained that I believe you're doing this for
Are you a
dishonest
sergeant
reason.
or an officer?
I am a sergeant.
Right.
Okay, so my point is also that coin is not worth...
Buckle up, guys. Today we are diving into a wild clash between an auditor and a police sergeant at a Tesco fuel station. What starts as a simple payment dispute quickly spirals into a legal showdown. Brett offers a £100 Royal Mint coin, but staff refuse it, calling police. Instead of applying the law, the sergeant sides with Tesco and threatens arrest. What happens next leads straight to a courtroom battle. Let's see how the storm unfolds.
The face value of it is not legal tender in such a way that this shop has to accept it as being valued at £100.
Okay, so it has... Hang on.
Short of the mark.
No, I'm not. So it is got a face value of £100, so it is worth £100.
It's not.
Well, you say that, but the Bank of England, the House of Commons, the state, all the institutions that came before you say it is, right? But you say it isn't, right? Now you say it's only worth whatever you say it was. Interestingly, I don't know if you've looked at the price of silver, but that's probably worth about £48 in silver. Hang on, I haven't finished yet. So that's £48 in silver.
Yeah.
Whereas, how much is a £20 note or a £50 note worth in plastic? What, a penny or two?
This is where the sergeant's credibility collapses. When the auditor rightly points out that the coin carries a face value of £100, the sergeant flatly denies it, calling it just a commemorative coin. That's not how the law works. A coin struck by the Royal Mint with an assigned face value is legal tender, regardless of whether it's commemorative or in general circulation. Its status comes from law, not from the cashier's preference or the officer's opinion. By claiming the coin does not carry its face value, the sergeant showed a total lack of understanding of currency law. Commemorative.
This is where it gets intense. Brett makes it clear, the coin has a face value of £100, backed by the Crown. But the sergeant flatly denies it, insisting it's worth only its silver weight, around £48. That's not how the law works. Once struck by the Royal Mint with an official value, it is legal tender, commemorative or not. The sergeant exposes his ignorance of currency law, doubling down on his claim and fueling the growing confrontation.
Or not, the £100 coin is backed by the Crown and the Treasury, meaning it must be accepted for payment of a debt.
Do you want to check to make sure it's not an unlawful arrest?
Another unit, please. This chap's about to be arrested.
Would it be unlawful arrest?
It's not a wrongful arrest.
It would be a wrongful arrest. Well, how can you arrest somebody for refusing to pay when they're offering to pay with a coin of the realm?
Because you're not offering to pay with payment that they can accept or will accept or have to accept. No.
Now, interestingly, you said that you've done some research on this and I've done this before.
Yeah.
Well, what was the outcome of it last time?
It was no further action.
Why was that then?
I don't know.
Well, how come you've got a record of that?
I'm about to let you drive off from here.
Well, how come you got a record that I did it last time, but you haven't got a record of the outcome?
Why? Because I haven't got time to look at that right now.
But you have got time to arrest me and deal with all the paperwork that'll be involved in that.
Yep.
So that's just abusing your power, I think, because what you're trying to do
is your power proportionally. These people here are trying to run a business, and you are making life extremely difficult by being obstructive in how you're going to pay.
No, I'm not.
The sergeant openly admits he's dealt with this exact situation before, but can't even explain what the outcome was. That alone shows he isn't learning from experience. He's just repeating the same heavy-handed response without reflection. What makes it worse is his refusal to even check. When pressed, he shrugs it off, saying he hasn't got time to look at the result, yet seconds later boasts he does have time to arrest and fill out all the paperwork that comes with it. That isn't police.
Now the showdown escalates. Brett pushes back, asking the sergeant to ensure the arrest is lawful. The sergeant admits he's dealt with this before, but conveniently doesn't recall the outcome, because last time it ended with no further action. Instead of learning, he repeats the same abuse of power, refusing to check, but ready to waste hours on arrest paperwork. It's ego over evidence, power over principle, and Brett refuses to back down.
Policing, that's ego. Arrest should be a last resort, backed by facts. Here, the facts were staring him in the face. The auditor hadn't left, had offered payment, and was holding lawful currency.
I'm only here to enforce the law, I'm not here to decide. I just suspect that an offence has taken place, okay? So I'm not convicting you, and you're refusing, to cooperate with me any further. You're refusing to resolve this situation by giving these people your details. So therefore,
No, I don't, because what you're trying to encourage me to do is not to give them my details, but to fill out a legally binding form. You're actually encouraging me to fill out a legally binding form, right? That would be detrimental to me.
Why? Because you have to pay for your fuel just like everybody else in this petrol station?
No, because you're forcing me not to use cash. It's exactly the same as you...
No, I'm forcing you to provide the legal tender that this business is willing to accept.
But it's not for them to pick and choose which...
It is, absolutely.
No, it's not.
If they will only accept payment in Pokemon cards, that is entirely up to them.
Yeah, but they need to state that on the pump, right, when I take the fuel. They need to say payment only in Pokemon. I'm not trying to... What do you think I'm trying to achieve then out of this?
So why are you not willing to offer any other sort of payment? Do you have bank cards on you?
Maybe it's a matter of principle. This is a coin of the realm. You shouldn't be threatening to arrest me because of their preference as to what type of note or coin they accept. That's ridiculous.
The sergeant trying to spin this as the auditor pulling a fast one is laughable. A fast one is when someone sneaks off without paying, not when they stand in plain sight offering legal tender straight to the cashier. The whole accusation collapses the moment you remember.
Here the battle turns philosophical. Brett refuses to sign Tesco's civil recovery form, stressing it's about principle, not convenience. The sergeant demands other payment methods, but Brett reminds him, the £100 coin is the coin of the realm. Forcing alternatives is unlawful. His calm, civil approach contrasts the sergeant's threats of arrest. The suspense is clear. Brett stands his ground on law, while the officer treats personal preference as power.
Remember, the auditor never left the forecourt, never hid his intent, and openly put forward a £100 coin issued by the Royal Mint. And when the sergeant presses, why not pay another way, the auditor's reply cuts through it perfectly. It's about principle. He shouldn't have to bend just because the shop or the police don't like the method of payment. The law recognizes that coin as valid currency. If retailers can refuse it and police back them up with threats of arrest, then suddenly it's not the law deciding what's money. It's individual preference.
That's not your job, is it, to state what type of coin that Tesco accepts or not?
It's my job to make sure that you don't go past the point of payment without making
Well,
payment.
I haven't driven off, have I? I've got every intention of paying with this coin.
No.
If I had no intention, if I was trying to do something dishonest, I'd driven off, wouldn't I? But the fact is, I've waited here for you to come and I've discussed it with you. I've tried to explain it, being very civil, don't be rude, have I? In any way, I've got no disrespect for the police whatsoever.
No.
Might go downhill a bit if you arrest me unlawfully.
Okay.
I just think, please, just check that it's a lawful arrest, because I don't think it is.
I believe it is.
And the whole point of cash and legal tender is that you cannot be successfully prosecuted for non-payment if you've offered legal tender. So if I had Scottish notes, right, now they're not legal tender in the UK, they're not legal tender full stop, but Tesco's actually accept those.
The auditor nailed it when he told the sergeant you can't be prosecuted for non-payment if you've already offered legal tender. That's the whole point of legal tender. Once it's offered, the debt is discharged whether the retailer likes it or not. The offence of making off without payment only applies when someone leaves without paying and intends to avoid it altogether. His comparison with Scottish banknotes is spot on. Technically, they're not legal tender in England, yet retailers across the country accept them every day without issue. So how can Tesco happily take Scottish notes but reject an official UK £100 coin that is legal tender? It exposes the absurdity of the sergeant's position. The problem wasn't the auditor's method of payment, it was the store's inconsistency backed up by bad policing.
There was an invitation to take the fuel, and I've taken the fuel, and now I've got a debt, and I'm offering to pay the debt in legal tender. Now in the store, it's different, because I haven't taken the food, have I? In fact, if I'd have eaten the food, I'd be obligated to pay for it, and then it'd be the same scenario, just the same as if you went into a restaurant and had a meal, and then you have to pay afterwards, and you offered to pay in that. Well, they can't lawfully have you prosecuted for failure to pay if you've offered a reasonable means of payment and they've refused to accept it.
Yeah, but you've refused to identify yourself to this person.
Well, I don't need to, do I?
I'm now starting to view your actions as being dishonest.
How have I been dishonest?
I suspect an offence is going to
How have I been dishonest?
Because you're refusing to give your information to this gentleman, so that...
But he's not entitled to my information, is he?
He is.
Okay, if I told you what my...
because you have a debt to settle up with him.
This is...
So to go to the restaurant scenario, if you ate your meal and then said, I've forgotten my wallet, I've got no means of paying.
No means of paying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So at that point you're not being dishonest. At the point that you refuse to identify yourself, or you put Mickey Mouse care of Disney World on a piece of paper and say, here's my details, you're then becoming dishonest.
The debate heats up. The auditor dismantles every excuse, whether comparing it to Scottish banknotes or a restaurant bill. Once goods are received, a debt exists, and legal tender clears it, period. Yet the sergeant twists it into dishonesty for not giving personal details or using another method. This isn't policing, it's bending rules around preference. By now, the gap between actual law and the sergeant's stance is wider than ever.
What about if, we went to the restaurant, we had a meal, right, and then I pulled out a £50 note and they said, look, we don't accept £50 notes. They can't make a decision about refusing to accept the £50 notes when you owe them money. They can only refuse to go through with the transaction in the first place. It's only because you've had the goods and you owe a debt that they can't refuse to accept the money.
The auditor's restaurant analogy is devastating because it strips the issue down to common sense. Once you've had the goods, the business can't suddenly pick and choose which lawful payments they'll accept. They can refuse a £50 note before service, but not after the debt exists. The same principle applies at the petrol station. The fuel was already supplied and the auditor offered legal tender. That ends the matter. The sergeant's failure to recognize this wasn't a small slip, it was a collapse of basic legal understanding. Legal tender is defined so that once it's offered, the debt is discharged in law, full stop. By siding with Tesco's preference over the statute, he turned a civil non-issue into a criminal matter that never existed.
Right, so these coins are made by the Royal Mint.
Yep, and they are legal tender.
And they are
No
legal
argument
tender.
there.
Yeah. So how can I be refusing to pay and being dishonest in any way when I'm offering to pay with a coin of the realm, a legal
Because
tender
you've
coin?
offered a form of payment that they are unable or unwilling to accept. Therefore, as I said, the onus is on you to find alternative means. You've failed to do that,
Okay.
and you are now proposing to leave here without actually giving any means of identification so they can arrange at a later date to make payment with you.
Okay.
So therefore, because of that, I suspect that you are about to commit an offence of making off without payment.
See, now I reckon that if you've offered to pay, and I've offered to pay lots of times, got it on video, and right, and they refuse to accept the payment, I can't see how that I've committed a crime, even if I don't
failed
pay.
to provide an alternative means of payment or come to an alternative agreement.
So what you're suggesting is that you're going to arrest me based on the opinion of a Tesco staff member,
No,
whereas another member of
arresting
staff
you
might
based
have
on my suspicion.
suspicion.
I'm sure with the amount of time this gentleman has spent here, and the fact that other colleagues are aware of the fact that we have been here for half an hour.
Nah, 16 minutes.
I'm sure if he were able to take that coin, he would have done it by now, because he's got plenty of other things to do. You are costing them money by the fact that your car's sat here taking out these two lanes.
Well, I've offered to move it, but he said no.
If they could,
I offered to move it, but he said no.
But if they were willing to take this at any point, they would have done by
Now, don't you think, Ben, right, that the country's biggest retailer would have a simple, basic understanding of coins of the realm and the legal tender situation and what they can do and what they can't do?
Well, they clearly do by the fact that they are not obliged to take it just because it's legal tender.
Because he said so. But how do you know he's right? And how do you know that what he's saying is the opinion of Tesco's as a company as a whole?
It's not that he's right, it's that the Bank of England is right, and it's the Bank of England that states that the shopkeepers are not legally obliged to accept any royal tender.
Right, okay, I understand where you're coming from with that, but that's referring to buying something from a store, not for paying a debt.
Okay, it's still the same,
No, it's not.
same situation.
No,
Okay,
it's not.
that's fine.
It's actually on the Bank of England website what legal tender is.
Yeah, it is. As I said, I have no argument with you about that at all.
The sergeant tries to sound clever by quoting the Bank of England, saying shopkeepers aren't legally obliged to accept legal tender. On the surface, that's true. The Bank of England itself says retailers can decide what payment methods they'll take. But what the sergeant completely misses is context. That rule only applies at the point of sale before goods are supplied. Once goods have been provided, a debt exists, and legal tender discharges that debt, whether the retailer likes it or not. That's exactly the distinction the auditor nailed. Paying for fuel isn't like trying to buy something off the shelf where the shop can refuse coins or notes in advance. The fuel was already in the tank, so the transaction had moved beyond choice. At that stage, the only question is whether the customer offers valid legal tender to settle the debt.
Okay, so I'm arresting you on suspicion of making off without payment. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something on which you later will rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
Yep.
Okay, so my intention at this time is to take you to Exeter Police Station, where you will be put into custody. The reason for that is for the prompt and effective investigation of the offence and to confirm your identity and your name and address.
Well, it'll be unlawful arrest, won't it?
No, not at all.
Right, where do you want me to park
I
my
have
car
the
then?
suspicion that you're about to commit an offence.
Well, what offence am I committing?
I've told you, I think you're about to make off without payment, and if I don't arrest you, then you will make off without payment. So there's my grounds.
Well, I'm offering to make
Can you
payment.
come out of the car, please?
Yeah,
sir?
stop.
Okay.
There's no use to use violence, is there?
And here's the climax. The sergeant arrests him, admitting no crime has been committed, only that he thinks one might occur. The auditor is dragged into custody, treated like a criminal, but he fights back in court and wins a £5,000 payout. That settlement screams one thing: the arrest was unlawful. This case is a brutal reminder when police ignore the basics of law, the law will correct them. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
No, step out of the car.
Let me just get my affairs together, alright?
Okay. Do you want to provide your details, or are you going to go to custody?
Well, I'll provide my details to you.
Yeah, but do you want to provide them to this man here?
No, but you want me to fill out a legal document.
Yeah.
No, I'm not filling out a legal
Okay,
document.
out of the car then, please, sir.
Going down to intimidation, he fought back and sued. The result? A £5,000 settlement, a figure that speaks volumes about how badly the police mishandled the case. You don't pay out thousands unless you know you're on the losing side. This entire episode shines a harsh light on how fragile policing becomes when officers ignore the basics of law. The sergeant claimed power based on nothing but what-ifs, inventing criminal intent that simply didn't exist. His refusal to recognise the £100 coin as legal tender only deepened the farce. Tesco breached their obligations, and yet the auditor was the one hauled off. It was upside-down policing. What makes it worse is the arrogance layered on top of the ignorance. The sergeant brushed off challenges, admitted he didn't know outcomes from previous cases, and still pressed ahead, wasting hours on an arrest that never should have happened. That's not protecting the public, it's protecting ego. And finally, the £5,000 payout is the loudest statement of all. It proves that when officers overstep, the law still has teeth. The auditor wasn't just right, he was vindicated in the strongest possible way. This case should be a wake-up call to every officer. Respect the law you claim to enforce, or the courts will force that lesson on you, one payout at a time. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me continue with my independent